Good evening. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting of February 24th, 2022. The Design Review Board meeting is now called to order. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus and the health recommendations from the Los Angeles County Health Department, this Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The Design Review Board meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6, and on AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage at www.glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The appeal application is also available online. Roll call. Board Member Minas is absent. Board Member Chagayan.
Present.
Board Member Lockeroff.
Present.
Board Member Welch.
Present.
And Chair Simonian is absent. Reports regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the February 24th, 2022 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the city's website on February 17th, 2022, and on the bulletin board outside City Hall on February 21st, 2022. Approval of minutes. Approval of the Design Review Board minutes from February 10th, 2022. All board members were present except for Board Member Minas, who is actually absent. So there is a correction on the minutes. He should be reflected as being absent and not as a no vote. There's also a correction that Chair Simonian was chair that evening and not Chair Welch. So are there any comments from board members regarding the meeting minutes from February 10th?
No.
None. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Board Member Welch. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Board Member Lockeroff. In terms of roll call, Board Member Lockeroff.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Your vote on the minutes
Oh,
to approve, yes or
yes,
no?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Chagayan
Yes.
and Board Member Welch.
Yes.
Thank you. And before we continue, apologies, since Chair Simonian is not present this evening, we will need to elect a Chair Pro Tem. Are there any motions for Chair Pro Tem? Or nominations in this case? Yes, Board Member Chagayan.
I'd like to nominate Board Member Welch.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Board Member Lockeroff. I'm assuming that Board Member Welch is accepting the nomination.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. With that, this goes on to oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. There are no callers for oral communications. Are there any comments from the board and from the board members at this point? No comments. We have one item under old business and we have two items under new business. The case under old business is Design Review Board case number PDR 2113521. This is for a new single-family home at 1766 Cielito Drive. This item is being taken off calendar and it will be renoticed once rescheduled. So with that, we have two items under new business. I can either turn the meeting over to Chair Pro Tem Welch or to the case planner for the first item, DRB case number PDR 2118187 for 3450 North Verdugo Road.
Yes, let's go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Babakani.
Thank you, Mr. Welch, and good evening, everyone. Try to share my presentation. Nice design review case with case number PDR 2118187 is for proposed development located at 3450 North Verdugo Road. The project site is approximately 21,000 square feet and zoned C31, which stands for Commercial Service High District 1 zone. The project site is located at the corner of Verdugo Road to the west and Chiquita Place to the south with a public alley to the east. The site immediately abuts a one-story commercial building to the north, Montrose Community Park to the east, across the alley, one-story commercial buildings across Verdugo Road to the west, and one-story commercial building to the south, across the street to the south. The project site slopes up gradually from the south to the north along the Verdugo frontage. It also slopes down from west to east along Chiquita Place. Currently, there are two one-story commercial buildings on the site which will be demolished. The existing structures and buildings on the site do not appear to meet any criteria for designation at the local, state, or national level, and therefore they're not considered historic resources under CEQA. The project site is to construct a three-story, 25,411 square foot mixed-use building with commercial uses, including offices and retails at the first floor and 22 residential units at the upper two floors. The project received a density bonus approval to provide 4 affordable units for very low-income households. There were 3 approved concessions for increased lot coverage, reduction in the required common outdoor space, and also not providing the required additional open space. In terms of the site planning, the proposed project is appropriate to the site and its neighboring property because it follows the pattern in the neighborhood. The project meets the required street front and interior setbacks. Also, the project meets the required landscaped area. The provided outdoor common open space for this development will be located at the east, facing the alley, and partially located at the north of the building, adjacent to the neighboring property. This common open space is accessible easily from all units for this project. The project also provides adequate private open space as private balconies and also as a rooftop decks. The project provides a total of 61 parking spaces, including 18 parking spaces located at the grade level for the commercial uses, and 43 parking spaces within a new one-level subterranean parking garage for the use of the residential units. A two-way driveway to the ungraded commercial parking will be from Verdugo Road, and a two-way driveway to the one-level semi-subterranean parking garage will be located from the Chiquito Place to the south of the building. The primary and secondary pedestrian access via elevator and staircase to the building and parking garages are appropriately integrated into the overall design, and the proposed landscape plan is complementary to the building design and enclosed drought tolerance landscaping. And the project will provide 4 new street trees adjacent to the project site along Chiquito Place to meet the city's forestry requirement. The project appropriately provides a perimeter stucco finish wall painted to match the building walls with metal railing on top along its property line facing the alley. And it provides concrete block wall as a boundary wall along the north property line adjacent to the neighboring site. The rooftop equipment, the location of trash bins are out of public view for this project, and the project proposed external gutters and downspouts designed in appropriate location on the facades. The proposed buildings, setbacks, recessed volumes, appropriate articulations, especially at the upper floors, location of entries, placement of storefronts for the commercial uses, and the use of different exterior wall finishes and colors, and also different architectural details which in combination are consistent, are appropriate and create building mass consistent with the existing and also under construction development in the neighborhood. Also, the project provides appropriate setbacks along the street front, street side, and interior property lines. The designs appropriately addresses the change in the site topography as well. The combination of hipped roofs and flat roof decks and the rooftop decks as a flat roof is appropriate to the context and reinforces the architectural design concept. The building's overall height of 41 feet meets the maximum height limit for this project and for this zone. The design and details of this project reinforce the proposed architectural style and are consistent with the neighborhood context of various architectural styles, as I mentioned. The proposed design, architectural details, colors are consistent in all 4 elevations and present smooth cement plaster finish, horizontal limestone tiles, brick tile veneer, metal roof, for the railing, solid steel bar and precast exterior steps, and for the planter walls, formed concrete and aluminum frame storefronts and fiberglass windows. All windows here will be fiberglass, dark bronze color. They will be recessed within the walls with precast concrete seal and without exterior frame, with combination of single casement and horizontal sliding operation. Again, compatible with the proposed architectural style. Here are some architectural drawing and details showing the window detail, the type of the windows, the door and garage gate, and also the fascia detail here. The proposed drawing do not show the finished materials of driveway and walkways. The condition of approval is recommended by staff to revise drawing to show decorative permeable paving at driveways and entryway walkway related to the design concept and colors. And that's the only condition by staff. Before I conclude my presentation, I want to mention the staff received comments and questions in email format from Mr. Joe Croning from the neighboring property to the north. And the overall concept of the email is in support of the project. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for your questions.
Do any of the board members have questions for Ms. Balkani? Board Member Chagani.
I do, and I'm not sure if this is something you could answer, but in terms of signage for buildings of this nature, is that something that the city goes back to the architect for in terms of a design, or who dictates that?
So the signs were not part of the design review proposal here, and they are always will be presented under separate permit. I'm not sure how far we can ask the applicant to match the design and color of the sign to the building. But for this type of building with this scale, we don't require sign program. So that's why we can regulate the location, size, and type of the signs for this building.
You cannot. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Delia, did you want to chime? Okay.
No. Okay. So, oh wait, Delia does. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Matidis.
Apologies. Anytime you have more than 2 tenant spaces in a new building, a sign program is required, and that sign program would then have to go through the design review process. But that for a sign program, that sign program would go through at the director level. So we would work in conjunction with our urban design studio staff to ensure that the sign program, the proposed signage is compatible with the style of the architecture, consistent with the locations, and also in compliance with our actual sign codes themselves. So, yes, it might not be as part of the design review package for your review at this point in time, but there will be a sign program required for this particular project because it has more than 2 tenant spaces, commercial tenant spaces.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so if there are no other questions for staff, let us turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Zarabias.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Welch and members of the board. My name is Hamlet Zorabians. I'm the project architect, and for the record, my address is 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B in Glendale. The project was described already by the planning staff very well and very meticulously. But I just want to make a couple of comments. There were no conditions to the recommendation that I can speak of, but we have indicated, obviously, on our plans, on the site plan, that our intention is to use interlocking pavers for the driveways, both driveways coming into the building. So we have no problem with that condition. And we can, as far as the cut sheets are concerned, we will turn it to our planner for review. The project is a mixed-use building, as was already explained. And what we try to do here is to have a internal courtyard to be able to introduce windows to the units themselves. There are only two stories of residential units, which goes above the podium, which underneath is the retail spaces. We are using the same location of the existing the driveway that exists right now on Verdugo Road, and there's not going to be another driveway opening up on the Verdugo Road, but we are introducing we are closing one driveway from Chiquita, and then we are kind of relocating it, and to be able to accommodate the residential. For security reasons and the convenience of the people who are going to be renting, we decided to do it this way, so the traffic will be much simpler to access the building. It's slower on that side. The building itself, as far as design is concerned, is a contemporary style, and we have submitted all the appropriate details and everything that we were required to, and it speaks for itself. As far as the materials are concerned, we have put together a nice palette there. Our intention was to soften the building, use kind of earth tones in this area here, and specifically, for instance, the brick material that we are using there, we really wanted to, give that sort of a classic, existing wall context to the flavor, if you will, to the building itself. And we introduced some shutters there. Also, very nicely, appropriately, we put it in certain locations. The windows are going to be all the double glazed and fiberglass windows we are using for the residents because we have to meet the 1224 energy conservation. And for retail space, that is the reason that we are using the aluminum mullions and aluminum storefronts, because it's readily available for residents. We are, just to mention that the actual zoning maximum height of this lot per C3 zone is 50 feet. And if this was a regular commercial building proposed here, you wouldn't have any setbacks required. So as you can see, the existing buildings that are next to it, they just don't have any setbacks per se, and you can actually build all the way to the property line, with the exception of 5 foot, landscaping that will be required on the parking side. But we are basically required to adhere to 1250 or 1250 zone, and that is the reason that we are having a huge front setback. Is because we are using our 1250 zone, and that landscape 25 at least feet front setback there is not going to be fully landscaped, and it creates a very nice buffer, and it makes it so much inviting to walk the stairs and then come in and access the building. Other than that, it's also, I want to note that we are providing ample parking spaces. On the first floor in the retail space, we are providing 80 parking spaces, which will give us 5 cars per 1,000 for the retail spaces. So in the future, if the tenant changes and there are other uses that we can accommodate there, such as like if the office, for instance, space that we have there, it becomes a medical office or whatever it is, it could accommodate in the future. So, and also as far as the residential is concerned, because we have the approval from our density bonus was approved, we are providing 4 very low income units, and they are scattered there. It was approved. And as far as the number of parking that is required there, we're only required to have, I believe, 31, if I'm not wrong. 31 parking spaces, where we are providing 43.
Okay, Mr. Zarabians, can you wrap it up, please?
Sure. Our intention was to have ample parking spaces, so not to let people park as much as possible outside. And I'll be available for any questions that you have, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zarabians. I appreciate that. I have a couple of questions to lead off with. I heard you say that you kept the driveway access where the current curb cut is, and I understand that, but it has the effect of splitting up the retail units into two fairly small ones. Did you consider potentially relocating the driveway access so that you could have more flexibility with that retail space? Because 2 1,000 square foot spaces, might be a little harder to rent,
Yeah, this whole area there is like full of mom and pop shops, and their sizes are not very large. with the exception of maybe a few of them, but they're very mom and pop shop oriented. The reason that we've chose the location for the driveway is the headroom that we will have. If you push it towards north side, we will have such a hard time actually making it work, because we will not be able to drive the cars in because of the headroom. If I relocated to the south side, that would be too close to the intersection. You would kind of pose a danger to the traffic itself. And so that was the reason that we put it in the center. And another reason, aesthetically, when we are kind of interrupting a straight line and then a straight wall, it gives us an opportunity to articulate more. And so we are creating this center portion to split, if you will, the structure into two halves. And it works, quite nicely. If one would prefer to have the retails all the same together, that's something else. But looking into mom and pop shop existing buildings that are there, the retail spaces that are there, I think it was to us that it was very nice and to have smaller shops for retail and office.
Okay. Second question, the appendages on the roof there that look like chimneys, are those actually, do they serve a functional purpose, or are they merely decorative?
No, they're these chimneys that we have. They're actually they tie down to where they're actually at the location of the fireplaces that we have in the units.
Okay.
They're supposed to be functional unless they will change it. Yes, they have the function.
Okay. Do other board members have questions? Board Member Lacroix.
Hello. I have a few questions regarding the south elevation specifically. One is regarding lighting design. I didn't see above the main entry for the building for the residents, what lighting will be provided there at the entry. I see some to the side. I just didn't know if there was any lighting directly for that entry.
Yeah, what we are trying to do here, and what we try to do, is not to overwhelm the building with a lot of light fixtures, if you will, because of course it's not in a kind of a residential area, but I personally don't like to have so much light fixtures on the building. I stay away from that. We have tried to most of it will resolve the lighting with downlights wherever we have canopies. And in that particular area that you're referring to, we have a double door, which is indented enough to have a recessed light on top of it. And so I just wanted to kind of keep this thing very simple. And the market lights that we introduced there is just it's kind of reminiscence of what would be in a sort of a Montrose Village, if you
right. That makes sense. Thank you. My other question regarding that elevation is you were going to have balconies there, and now they're just like these the shallow kind of ledges with railings. And I was wondering, what the function of those were, and then also if you considered just eliminating that altogether, the railings at that point.
Sure. That was brought to my attention, just lately, and rightly so. I think what was there, because of the second floor, which is the first residential floor, we had introduced, obviously, their private open spaces in the form of, terraces for those two units. Somehow, graphically, those was duplicated on the third floor, which we were not supposed to. And then it was brought to my attention, that it was not consistent with our 3D renderings and the elevations. And we really didn't need those terraces over there. So we altogether eliminated those because the upper level units, they each have direct access to their own private decks on top. And that constitutes as their private open space. So That was our preference to eliminate those two because it was just a typo to us.
Right, so there'll be no railings there ultimately. Great. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's it for now. Oh, one last question too regarding the rooftop terraces. I think they're wonderful. I was wondering, ultimately you'll need solar panels and that sort of thing. Did you plan for that space with the rooftop?
Yes, yes, we did. On the roof plan, it shows probable, with dash line, the
I
locations.
thought, okay. I wanted to make sure that I was reading that correctly. Thank you.
Can I jump in for
Mr. Guy?
clarification?
Okay.
You can hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, well. On the south facade, for Commissioner Lockeroff's questions, we're talking about the upper floor that had the sliding doors with kind of a Juliet railing in front of them. And Mr. Zarabians, are you saying that those are going to turn into windows rather than sliding doors with the railings, or you just eliminated the balconies?
No, okay, that's a good question. No, I didn't mean to imply that we're going to be eliminating all the railings. I meant those two particular ones that were not consistent with the drawings. As far as few of the windows that they have, railings in front of them only, and they're not balconies. Actually, the reason for that is that I didn't want to necessarily have the glass, a short window there. I wanted the glass to continue all the way down, and that's why we introduced those railings there, and they're basically it occurs in 4 different places. I meant to keep them, and I like them that way. I never wanted to kind of bring them, like for instance, if I speak to that, if some of them that are really deep and they're actual small window, small balconies, but there are 2 of them or 3 of them, as a matter of fact, they don't have that much of depth there, and that's why they're just mimicking the balcony railing in front of them. And so I wasn't sure if that's what you meant or not. I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
Right. No, that was what I was referencing, whether the railing would still be there, or if you, I guess my follow-up question would be is, would you consider a fixed window? So you could bring the glass all the way down to the bottom, but, a fixed window with sliders on top. I don't know if you considered an alternate such as that.
Yeah, I can do that. I can, because I think we have the same type of window introduced in our schedule, and I am using that type in certain areas.
Locations, it is consistent. Yeah.
Yes. If you feel that's more appropriate and make a condition for that, either way I can go.
That works for you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, to make sure I'm following. So on the north elevation, there are 2 windows, 2 doors that do not have a balcony. They instead have a railing that is basically flush with the building, so it creates the Juliet balcony. So 2 on the north facade, and then if I'm looking at this correctly, 1 on the west facade, on the far north side of the west facade. Is that correct? Okay. It is correct. And then on the south facade, on the 3rd floor, those 2 windows that flank the central stack of the entrance area, those will not have railings.
Yeah, those are balconies actually.
Those, in the front. No, I'm talking about the ones that had been on the plans in the packet. They had been balconies. Now you submitted ones that don't have balconies.
True.
So I just want to be clear that those do not have railings, or they should have railings.
No, those 2 railings that was indicating there on the 3rd floor, at the front of the building, we have eliminated that terrace. Okay. We're not going to have any railings there.
Okay, so no railings on the 3rd floor on those 2 balconies that have been eliminated.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I think I'm clear.
And just to clarify one for the Hamlet, when you're taking these off, we're still going to have a symmetrical distribution of railings versus no railings? Because I heard there was one point where there might be 3, which would leave 1 window with a balcony and the others with different types of windows, or?
Well, Jay, this was my intention to have a distribution, as you're saying. I mean, correct distribution. If I have it on the right wing, I want to have the same thing on the left wing. And because I had actual balconies on one side, I wanted to make that particular window actual door by putting just a railing in front of it, just to mimic it. So that was my intention. I mean, I find that more appropriate. But if you, like I said, if that bothers you, I mean, I can always adjust it to your liking.
Okay, in the board deliberation, if you just consider symmetry and the appearance, and then we'll take it wherever you want.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions? I actually had just one more, and I think it's really probably just a clarification. On the revised A2.1 document that we received, it references in the statistics here that's for outdoor space, required private outdoor space shows as equals 40 square foot per unit, and then proposed private open spaces equals 40 square foot per unit. But I want to make the clarification that that's just where it's the minimum, because there's an average is considerably higher than 40 square foot, but there are some units that only have the 40 square foot. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading it correct. In the schedule, it also divides the private open spaces that is provided into two segments. One will be the terraces. The other one clearly is the rooftop deck. But nevertheless, in some of them that they're about maybe could be 48 or 50. We're just showing the minimum 40 that is required.
I understand. Thank you. I just wanted clarification. Okay, I think that concludes our questioning for the applicant. Are there any public callers for the matter? Okay, I am seeing a shaking of head, so no public callers for the matter. So with that, we can close the public hearing and open it up for board member deliberations. Board member Chagayan, would you like to lead us off?
Sure, thank you. Thank you to our staff and to Mr. Zorabians for the nice presentation. I'm in favor of this project. I think it's a nice design. Site planning is appropriate. I appreciate the stepping back of the undulation and articulation of the walls and the details, the thoughtfulness behind the details as you described them, Mr. Zorabians. It's not just a stucco box that makes it look like more of a commercial building. So I appreciate that effort and attention to detail. The reason I was asking about signage was because I do think that oftentimes it's never, part of the initial design, and it can really hurt a building in the end if the architect is not involved with how that's placed. But I was happy to hear that there's some kind of a program that will be in consideration. I also had the same question about the chimneys, whether or not they were practical or just decorative, because I do feel like they are pretty prominent the way it's shown currently. I mean, of course, it's because of the placement and in the living space, and it makes sense. And but I would consider, if you go down the route of maybe just keeping them decorative, because as you know, these days with types of fireplaces, we don't necessarily have to have a chimney going up. That would be something to consider. That way you can at least lower it enough that it doesn't feel so out of proportion. I think the landscaping was nice. I love the private balcony, rooftop terraces. I think that's lovely, and people will enjoy that and use it year round in Southern California. As far as landscaping goes, I wish there were some plans for trees along Verdugo, because in this area it's the woodlands, and it's beautiful with our trees along the main street would be nice. but not necessarily. I'm open to what my other board members say. As far as the colors, I do feel like it was a little subdued. I heard you mention earth tones, and I appreciate that. But I think it's working well. I'm again also not opposed to leaving it as is or introducing maybe a little less subdued color for part of the building. But I like the brick look, the limestone. Overall, I think it's a lovely design, and I'm in favor of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lacroix.
I agree. I also feel that overall this project's appropriate to the site and the neighborhood. I went by and I appreciate how you've articulated the commercial space in a similar way to the neighbors, and that you paid homage to the brick that they've used on a lot of these buildings in a new way with the lighter color. I do similarly feel that because of the color similarities, it does seem, even though it has this great articulation, almost a little monolithic still. And I would love to see just a hair more differentiation between the color of the commercial down below and then the residential. It'd be nice to see that, you know, stand out as what it is, something different than the residentials. But again, I really like your color palette. I think you've selected very nice materials. And I like the, you know, high contrast with the windows, and Marvin windows are great, and quality materials, and also the roof is a great, the standing seam metal roof is really great. I would also say, yeah, again, I like the articulation, and I think that the open space, the private open space on the roof is fantastic. Let's see, I'd say the other thing, one thing that I would love to see is the railings, and perhaps this leans towards a personal preference, but I feel like vertical railings are reminiscent to me of security bars, and so I think even just changing the direction of them or a different material in consideration of that would be I would like that as a condition as well. So. And I think that's it. But overall, great design, and I think it is appropriate to the area. So, thank you. Oh,
Thank
actually,
you.
sorry.
Go ahead.
One last thing that I did want to mention regarding that southern facade that is on Chiquita is I do think that the entry there could use a little refinement. The way that the top of the entry is there, and then the way that those balconies work, it ends up having this kind of castling effect with the line there. I wish I could draw it for you, but essentially, I would love to see the removal of the balcony railings where there's no true balcony. As I mentioned before, it'd be really nice to just have a fixed glass at the bottom, and that would allow you to have a cleaner line across the top of the entry rather than it undulating up and down at those windows. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to echo my fellow board members here. I think that the project is very well executed. I think that it is very respectful and responsive to the neighborhood context. I also like those roof decks. I think it's great where those can be successfully incorporated as they're done here. I also very much appreciate how the common open space was done on that rear side facing the alley. And you know, a lot of people think, oh, facing an alley is horrible, but it's actually across the street from a lovely park. So I think that common outdoor space will be very popular and really feel as though it is part of that park space right across the street, across the alley. On the note regarding the facade, that too, the residential facade really, that too struck me as not quite as prominent as I think it might call for being. I think the lighting with the sconces located by the entranceway, but on the second floor, seems a little off to me. I wouldn't think that light fixtures mounted like 20 feet above the ground in that entrance area makes sense. I think that it'd be more appropriate to either remove those two sconces on the second floor or to relocate them closer down. For the color scheme, I think it's nice. I mean, if I look at the materials board, I think I see a more contrast in the colors represented there than I see in the renderings. So if I judge by what I'm seeing on the materials board, I think that there is sufficient contrast, and I for one appreciate the fact that it is more subdued, that it is more using earth tones and providing some subtle contrast as opposed to significant contrast. You get the significant contrast with the use of the metalwork and the windows and the roof, and I think overall the composition is well executed, as I said at the beginning. So generally, I'm in favor of the project with the minor proviso that I think we should suggest a little bit of reworking there for that southern entranceway for the residential units. So who else would like to respond to each other amongst the board members? Go ahead, just jump in.
I mean, I think we're all in agreement, and we pretty much didn't feel strongly enough to really place any kind of conditions other than what's already recommended by staff, and along with that rework of that residential entry. So I would move to approve the project with those conditions.
Okay, Mr. Platt, do you have what you need to properly craft a written condition?
If Board Member Chagayan is correct, we're not going to address the chimneys, the Juliet balconies, or the color palette.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of the color palette, I think I think that you're right. When you look at the board, I'm looking at the material board, I do see that it is really lovely together. So I would be on board with that. The Juliet balconies, I still have my opinions on, but I think overall it's a good design. So
okay, so the board, so we're good with the balconies as proposed with the vertical pickets.
Oh, that part of it. Okay, I thought you meant the.
No, I meant
the
issue before about the symmetry and the issue, but then also Board Member Lakaroff mentioned the verticality, which I would throw in. The board has approved vertical pickets a lot over the years, so a little.
Okay, so you have a history.
We often think the vertical ones are often for more traditional looking buildings, where the horizontal type are more for contemporary buildings. Not a hard and fast rule, but typical. Let me just, and then in terms of the entry, the issue is to refine the entry by eliminating the railing directly above the entry doors, continuing the head of that doors, the window, the entry surround, and then also either eliminating the two lights at the second floor or bringing them down to flank the entry doors at the first floor.
Correct.
Okay, then I've got what I need for the conditions.
Okay. Board Member Lakaroff, will you second the motion? Since
yes, I second the motion. Then.
Okay. All right, very good. We have a motion made and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, this is a roll call. Board Member Lakaroff?
Yes, confirm.
Board Member Chagayan?
Yes.
And Chair Welch?
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Much appreciated.
Okay, I believe we are ready for the next case. This would be PDR 2119250. Mr. Joe, are you ready to give your staff report?
I am, but I do believe.
Oh wait, we have board member
hand up.
raising her hands. Yes.
So sorry, could we take like a 2-minute recess if that's possible?
Okay. That's perfectly fine. Okay, we're on recess for 2 minutes.
I guess we're back from recess, and I'll start, Mr. Chair, with the next this evening.
Okay.
Go ahead and start.
But we are now back from recess. So we'll commence with case number PDR 2119250. So, Mr. Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me a moment here. All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Next item is located once again at 216 through 222 South Glendale Avenue and 611 Orange Grove Avenue. And a high-level summary of this request is to demolish 3 buildings and to construct a approximately 1,500 square foot counter-service restaurant with a drive-through and an outdoor dining area, which will be a Starbucks. And as expected, I'll go further in detail about the existing buildings and the proposed project on subsequent slides. Just to break in onto the project's location. Yeah, the project is located south of the Civic Center at the southeast corner of Glendale Avenue and Orange Grove Avenue. The site consists of 3 contiguous parcels, approximately a little bit over 20,000 square feet. It's zone C3, which is commercial services, and as shown on the screen, the abutting zones are R2250 to the east, C3 to the north and south, and downtown specific plan East Broadway district to the west across Glendale Avenue. This is an aerial of the project site, and similar to the previous slide, the site is shaded in yellow at the center of the screen. This slide contains photographs of the project site. Beginning at the 11 o'clock position of the slide is the photograph of the multi-tenant commercial building located at 216 South Glendale Avenue. It's outlined in blue, and moving in a counterclockwise on this slide, the photo outlined in green is a single tenant commercial building, which is today the Golden Fork at 222 South Glendale Avenue. And last outlined in brown is the 908 square foot single family residence address at 611 Orange Grove Avenue, which was built in 1923. All 3 buildings were identified in the city's 2019 South Glendale Historic Resources Survey, which all were assigned a status code of 6Z, which means it's ineligible for historic designation. Excuse me. Moving on to site planning. The project includes an approximately 1,500 square foot counter service restaurant. It will include 8 parking spaces to service the new restaurant. Access onto the property will be via a one-way driveway from Glendale Avenue and exit via a one-way exit driveway onto Orange. A 11.5 foot wide by approximately 350 foot in length drive-through lane will be provided, which can accommodate approximately, well, actually 16 vehicles queued. The drive-through pattern has been designed to maximize the amount of vehicles on the site. Throughout the property, a variety of California friendly trees, shrubs, and ground cover are provided. And at the eastern property line shared with the residential use, the zoning code requires 24-inch box trees along this side of the yard to provide a layered landscape buffer to buffer the interface with this new commercial use. A layered landscape palette will include a total of 9 yew pine, which will grow upright and has a profile to grow up to 50 feet tall with a spiraling branching. Staff has identified that the yew pine is not identified in either WUCLs or Be-Water Wise, and which will require regular watering. Staff recommends that these trees that along this buffered area for this residential area should be replaced with a variety that's identified in WUCLs or Be-Water Wise. Also, that's something that has a wider tree canopy that will further enhance that buffering. Next, the restaurant will be set back approximately 15 feet away from Glendale Avenue. And the front area will be improved with a covered outdoor seating area for the restaurant patrons. And further to the south, pedestrian space is provided at the corner of Glendale Avenue and Orange Grove Avenue. This space will enhance the appearance of the site and enhance the pedestrian experience from the surrounding neighborhoods. However, staff further has a recommendation to further activate the landscape pedestrian space and recommends to provide additional seating should be considered. And at the eastern property line, a 3 to 8 foot tall CMU wall is provided to further buffer the adjacent residents. The specific design detail for this wall were not provided. Staff recommends that the wall should incorporate decorative materials such as split base CMU masonry blocks or with masonry blocks or caps, or to be finished with stucco to enhance the appearance of the resident from the residential use as well as from the street. Also, trash bins will be sited centrally on the lot and accessed by the main one-way driveway aisle. And like the block wall shared with the residential property line, specific design details for the enclosure were not provided. And staff recommends that the enclosure should incorporate materials and design elements from the new building to provide an integrated design for this prominently placed feature. Moving on to the mass and scale of the project. This slide is the project's elevation. As you can see, the building is modest in size. It's designed with a horizontal emphasis. The height of the building and the canopies extend is 14 feet high at most areas. Pardon me. The tallest volume includes an additional 7-foot tall parapet wall to conceal the restaurant's roof-mounted equipment, and it will extend an overall height of 21 feet. And specifically the area I'm speaking about, you can see on the screen, I have like a gray dotted or circle around the area I'm talking about. To provide a better proportional relationship between the two buildings' volumes, staff recommends to increase the height of the parapet cap at the tall stucco volume to match or closely resemble the dimensions of the fascia at the lower portion of the building. And just to kind of give you an example of what I'm speaking about, and this is an example on your screen, extending the parapet cap, like I mentioned on here, as you can see, this is a shot from cover page, which is identified as SB10. These are examples with a heavier parapet cap, which you can see with the red circles. And this is what staff is kind of suggesting or recommending, that to help soften or kind of break up that stucco wall to provide better integration with the design. Something like this to the effect, which was shown on the cover page, is something that staff is recommending. Last, the project includes the quality finishes such as painted stucco with plaster reveals, Parklix, which is a high-density timber panels on siding, wood fascias, and aluminum storefront windows and doors. Overall, staff recommends approval with suggested conditions with the staff report. Prior to concluding my presentation, would the chair of the board like for me to read the recommended conditions of approval, which I'm glad to do?
I don't think that that's necessary. I think we've all read the report, so I think you can just carry on.
And this concludes my presentation. Staff would be available for any questions. This evening, we do have Pastor Casanova as well as Mark Bueno on standby from our traffic division to answer any questions for clarification. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joe, and thank you for that clarification on the parapet. Just a quick follow-up question on that. So we're not proposing to actually increase the entire height of the parapet, just to take up more of the height of the wall with the cap. Is that correct?
That is correct. Maybe not extending the height of the parapet was not necessarily the right way to say it, but maybe the parapet cap of the weight of that cap should be extended to match the on the lower portion, which is like on the canopy lower portion of the building, and that's what staff's was recommending.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have in reading through some of the notes and comments from other departments, I noted from Traffic and Transportation that they were proposing that vehicular access southbound on Glendale should not be allowed to turn left and to insert some kind of a reverse taper there to guide the traffic onto Orange Grove. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that what the city would like to have happen here? Is that southbound traffic on Glendale be sort of discouraged from turning left into the driveway?
That is correct. That's my best understanding. I'm pretty sure that we'll have further clarification questions and kind of going over all the on-site circulation, the site planning, the design. We can get clarification from our traffic folks.
Yeah, I would like to get that because I am concerned about how that circulation works, especially if you're restricting that access from southbound Glendale. Did the applicant potentially examine reversing that flow from entering on Orange Grove and exiting onto Glendale, or was that never considered?
There were a lot of design iterations which staff has worked extensively with the applicant to maximize for the best design for the site and to eliminate or avoid the most impact onto the street for the queuing. We looked at it in many different directions as far as two-way driveways, one-way driveways, going from entering and exiting from Glendale and Orange Grove. Staff, as far as planning staff for on-site circulation and design building and the amenities, this is something that the planning staff has worked with the applicant to bring forth to the board. And prior to me concluding, answer your question, I do want to talk about some of the comments received or materials, but I just didn't want to end it there. But I hope that answered your questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and one more question, and this might be a question more for Mr. Platt, is does the city have a particular guideline or goal when we're talking about the maximization or proper utilization of commercial sites in the city? I'm just struck by the fact that we're talking about reducing it down from basically 6,000 square feet of commercial property spaces plus a residential unit to a 1,500 square foot unit, which is mainly about servicing cars as opposed to servicing the street. So I wonder, does the city have any particular policy or guidelines that would provide some guidance here?
Mr. Chair, before, I know your question was directed to Mr. Platt. Allow me to take a stab at this really quick. Perhaps I could shed some light into this, and if Jay would like to enhance or add to his piece to it, I more than welcome him. You're absolutely correct. Staff does recognize that we're eliminating 6 buildings and reducing it down to a 1,500 square foot. And you're absolutely correct. The design guidelines do state, we would want to introduce uses to that activate the street front, encourage pedestrian activity, but the code does allow the fast food restaurant, and the applicant has their desire is to provide this counter service restaurant with a drive-through, which both are permitted by right. And some of that, with that consideration with design guidelines, we work extensively with the applicant. Well, how do we achieve what the guidelines want? And that's why we were strongly encouraging that outdoor seating area at the front along Glendale Avenue to get that outdoor seating areas to activate the street front, produce activity. And then at the front, rather than just having a bland landscape area, if we could have an outdoor space that could enhance the pedestrian experience with the adjacent neighborhoods, in that way, for this permitted use and this permitted drive-through that's allowed by our code, at least we can get this project closer to those design goals. And I hope that answers your question, but Jay, please, if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do.
No, I think staff recognizes the exact issues that Board Member Welsh is considering, and we agree, but we don't have a mechanism to kind of prevent something like this.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Joe. You did an excellent job there, and as always, your presentations are top-notch. So do the other board members have questions for Mr. Joe? Board Member Chagayan.
Whether this is for Mr. Joe or for our traffic engineering staff that have joined, I'm just curious or wondering what's going to be in place to ensure that these driveways are in fact only going to be used in one direction, and then also the pass-through driveway being much larger than the queued driveway. Is there a traffic reason for that?
I could, and please, I encourage our traffic folks, Pastor Casanova or Mark Bueno, to chime in. The entrance does have 6 parking stalls, and they're not at any 90 degree. They're slightly off by like maybe 80 degrees. But they do require a backup for that as well, for turn radius to get into it. So that might be an answer for some, for that driveway width being a little bit wider, but it does have some functionality for those stalls to be accessed.
Right, but then I guess I'm just wondering, when you pull into a driveway in the way it's currently laid out, I would have to, when I'm turning left into the driveway from Glendale Avenue, I'm sorry, turning right into the driveway, I have to get in my left lane. And then if I'm parked there and I back up, how do I know that I can't go back out through, or what's going to stop me from going back out through Glendale Avenue driveway as opposed to using this 15, 16-foot pass-through lane if cars are all backed up right there?
I'll jump in if that's okay. Typically, a project site such as this one with one-way internal circulation will have pavement arrows marked on the pavement throughout the site. They can also be complemented with signage, again, letting the parked vehicles know which direction they should exit.
Thank you. So it's not a matter of putting some of those spikes that say you can't go this way, right? I don't know what dictates that kind of a.
Yeah, maybe something a little more friendly than spikes. Probably a site like this with so much usage that may end up being an issue. But there have been, I've seen other Starbucks sites where they've used quite a few of the pavement markers to define the specific direction, and it seems to have worked quite well.
And since we're talking about circulation here, could you also please address this question about not being able to turn left into that driveway from southbound Glendale? Because my concern is that if they can't turn left into the driveway and they're being funneled down to turn left onto Orange Grove, but you can't enter the parking lot from Orange Grove. So somebody would have to be like doing a U-E there and then coming back out onto Glendale to enter into the driveway from where you want it to. And that just seems that it could create a bit of havoc there on Orange Grove, which is already, I don't know if you've been there lately, but there's a car wash there, and those cars often stack up into the street. So potentially it could become somewhat chaotic there. Sure.
It's okay. What I'll mention is the way the site circulation evolved. Originally, there was an entry driveway on Orange Grove. However, one of the concerns from traffic engineering in viewing at other similar Starbucks sites within Glendale, where we had problems with on-site spillover onto the streets that created problems, we wanted to see more storage capacity within the site. So that was one of our comments to their project team. And the response to the project team was to reconfigure the site to maximize that on-site storage. We also suggested to them to look at a nearby Starbucks within Glendale and get an understanding of what those queues, worst case scenario queues, could potentially be, and try to contain all of that queue within the site. What the team came back with was the configuration that we see today that accommodates, I believe, more than 15 cars on site to queue up. But what that created, it created a one-way circulation, which put an entry driveway on Glendale Avenue and the exit on Orange Grove. Now, the southbound left turn prohibition comes about because that entry driveway is on the far north part of the site and puts it closer to Harvard Avenue or Harvard Street, where we have an existing northbound left turn lane there. So there's a conflict. So there really won't be enough room for southbound vehicles to dip into the two-way left turn lane and make a left turn without there being conflict with the opposing left turn. So that's where our comment came from for the southbound left turn restriction. However, point well taken, that does create concerns regarding circulation. How do vehicles from patrons from the north get to the project site. And that's one of the comments we've made to the traffic engineering team, and they're supposed to be incorporating that into the revised traffic study, and we'll get a chance to review that. One thing that I don't really see a good way around is that it may lead to additional traffic on Orange Grove. And that's something that we will be taking a look at to assess those potential impacts.
Hey, Pastor, could you just clarify if the cars traveling south on Glendale pull into the left turn lane and then pull a U, not turning onto Orange Grove, but pull a U on Glendale, is that something that's acceptable for traffic?
We'd have to see the revised traffic study, but as it sits right now, likely no. We were hoping to get that revised traffic study and see what the traffic engineer consultant is going to propose. But we would have concerns regarding U-turns at Glendale Avenue and Orange Grove, just because the amount of traffic that there is on Glendale Avenue and the potential for issues with that U-turn maneuver.
Well, let me just ask this: the left turn lane there from Glendale onto Harvard, that seems fairly long, and I can't imagine there's that much activity that would necessitate such a long turn lane. Could we not maybe just shorten that up a little bit to enable cars to turn left? Because I still remain concerned that people, if they are being restricted, will turn left onto Orange Grove and really exacerbate the situation on that street.
Our traffic engineering's latest comment to the applicant's consultant team was to add Harvard and Glendale Avenue to their study intersections to see what the traffic looks like at that intersection, and we'll be in a better capacity on the next review to be able to take a look at that. That is a good suggestion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions that have come up to people as we've been talking? Okay. Seeing no hands, I think we can turn it over to the applicant to hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for interjecting. I just want to add that staff did receive a comment which was included in the packet. The concerns were to traffic and noise. And later this evening, and maybe within an hour and a half before DRB had started, one of the adjacent properties or within the proximity, which is the car wash, they had their traffic engineer provide some preliminary findings with recommendations, which we forwarded on to the board. If you don't have any of those, I can have those re-forwarded to you. Our traffic division, as well as planning staff, has taken a look at these. But I just wanted to state these comments from the public that staff had received, and just to ensure that it was announced into record. And also, if anyone from the board doesn't have it, we'll make sure that we will forward it again. And that's all I would like to say prior to concluding my portion. Billy has her hand up.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Joe. We also received a comment during the Design Review Board meeting, which was forwarded to you moments ago. So we would like to add one more comment emailed to that list.
Is that the one that you would like for me to? Is that something you're going to be forwarding?
I already have. So all the board members and you were included in that email.
Okay.
Forward. So it was a photograph and a comment regarding another Starbucks on Central Avenue and the queuing lanes for that location.
Yes, I'm quite familiar with that location. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Let us, go ahead, Barbara Chugayan.
I guess I do have a follow-up question about whether or not it was the applicant's choice to plan for more, car queuing than it is to provide more parking. Are they meeting basically just the minimum required parking and then, going heavier on the drive-through lane?
There's very limited seating in the inside. And I believe I recollect, I can double check this, but I think the code requires 7 parking spaces and they're providing a total of 8. One of the concerns and staff did talk about was minimizing impacts on the street. So we did have that type of comments and not necessarily focus, but just to have with direction to enhance the design and minimize impacts out in the street. So they might have 1 additional parking space on site. And once again, this is a counter service restaurant, which has very limited seating by code. It would have no more than 8 seats and 8 chairs.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So let us go ahead and move on to the applicant for his presentation, please.
Hi, good evening, Chair Welch, board members, staff, and members of the community that may also be on. Thank you again, Mr. Joe, for the presentation and the lead-in on behalf of myself and the rest of the Starbucks project team here with me. My name is Matthew Clemente. I'm a development manager with and architect representative for Starbucks in the care of our firm, Greenberg Farrow. For the record, adding and clarifying that we are also the architect and engineer of record for all disciplines for this project. We've had the opportunity of carrying multiple projects over the years with Starbucks as a design partner and development consultant. And once again, we've been tasked and have developed a concept that we're pleased to bring tonight. And thank you again, Dennis, for introducing a lot of the strengths and concepts that have really carried this project forward to date. So first, and I want to be able to share my screen right here in just a moment. So as additional background and to offer up some context, we had first began vetting this site in the summer and fall of 2019 between Starbucks Real Estate and Design Development and also with the city. It goes without saying that the Starbucks brand has been a valuable addition to wherever we locate. And it really isn't a difference at this corner, and recognizing a lot of the opportunities and strengths of Glendale and Orange Grove being a high volume commercial thoroughfare and situated in the core of the Civic Center, which currently is lacking the amenity of a Starbucks, specifically as both a drive-through and a cafe user. So, understandably, given the site strengths, but the inherent challenges associated with site development and optimizing the project to best meet the criteria and goals stated within the design guidelines and other directives, that's why we specifically engage planning, economic development, and public works traffic to identify opportunities and develop and refine those ideas. So specifically with the cafe drive-through combination user in mind. So over the 2 years, we had significant evolution that Dennis was alluding to, and I'm going to work backwards here. Right now, we're looking at the current iteration of the building and as submitted for DRB, and then just quickly scrolling through. Some may have some minor changes, but then you'll see significant changes in site circulation and just the orientation in the efforts to mitigate a lot of those concerns, specifically traffic and overstack, and also slowly incorporating some of the improvements that Pastor himself had raised, such as controls to limit access in and onto the site with respect to Glendale Avenue being the primary feeder. Just moving back. So some of the improvements or some of the revisions just really was adjusting the inventory of parking, whether it's the location of the trash enclosure. But foremost, we came in pretty early on with the idea that we wanted this to be a strong pedestrian activated corner and also maximize the opportunities for transitional outdoor and really public space, given the context of this area being in this immediate vicinity of the Civic Center. Now, I think just to illustrate the extreme point here, this is, prior to the major redesign, and this had its challenges as well. But of course, we were doing everything we can in our power to orient the building to the sidewalk, make it more of a street face activation, and meanwhile still encourage site circulation in a way that wouldn't be problematic or heavily impacting either Glendale or Orange Grove, any of those two public right-of-ways on the corner. So I'll just move it on to the next slides for illustrative purposes, the elevations and the materials. But yeah, so given those strengths and those inherent challenges, we really wanted to bring forth a project that unified in the design guidelines, but not just satisfy them, but emphasized a lot of those concepts that I had just mentioned. So pedestrian activation, transitional outdoor and public space, transparency and its aesthetic detailing, and foremost, operational efficiency and minimally disruptive site circulation. So at that point, well, without getting into many project specifics, I'm sure there will be an opportunity for you to ask pointed and better directed line of questioning and clarification. Given the findings and determinations issued by planning and all reviewing departments at this point, we acknowledge and we're prepared to accept the recommendation to approve the project with the specified conditions. And also, I just wanted to supplement that some of those conditions may already be satisfied with our current construction documents. Specifically, I know Dennis had just introduced breaking up some of the building massing with materials and create more of a weighted cap above the first roof line and for that parapet. So that's one revision that I could point to that has changed. So already introducing the corrugated metal paneling. And once again, this is reflected on our most current construction document set. And to that effect too, the conditions specified by traffic is already reflected in our site plan circulation. And given that we are going to resubmit to traffic, we are prepared to satisfy on-site circulation and other traffic controls by way of signage or paint on the concrete. We're well cognizant of that, and I think that's consistent with what we expect heading into plan check and other reviews. So with that said, thank you all for your time and consideration. Myself and members of our project team will remain available to anyone as well as all interested parties during and following this meeting. And again, thank you very much. That concludes it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Clemente. I guess my first question would be, again, focusing on the circulation and the queuing. Do you have, or does Starbucks corporate have data on, given the profile of the neighborhood, the census data and things like that, what could reasonably be expected to have in terms of the standard line of cars that we should plan for?
So I do have June Lee on behalf of Starbucks, Starbucks' design project team. She may offer some more data and benchmarks to expand on that, but it will vary between different metropolitan areas and zip codes just based on the demos and the existing site topographies. But at this point, I just wanted to say that this stack, even to the fullest extent of the site, accounts for the maximum overstack being 15 exclusively in the queue, and then perhaps 5 or 6 before it touches the public right of way. But I'll pass it on to June if she wanted to offer any data on duration and other expectations for service and from the order point and to pick up.
Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Hi, my name is June from Starbucks. I'm a store designer. So for the site plan, I was trying to maximize the drive-through lane because there is a potential spilling to the Glendale Avenue. So there are 16 cars stacked total for the drive-through lane, and plus 6 cars before impacting the Glendale Avenue. So we were trying to minimize the impact for the Glendale Avenue so that it doesn't spill our car stacks.
So just to add to that too, Chair Welch, that in some of the instances that you may have also mentioned as posing challenges, namely the store location at the intersection of Central California, which for full disclosure, we had also had permitted and opened. There was existing constraints, specifically in the fact that the build improvements we couldn't change. So just wanted to emphasize that those being building conversion, tenant improvements, a lot of the hardships were inherited, and if those drive-through lanes may have been deficient, while they were still compliant with the code and within the parameters of us, achieving a building permit and opening the store, a lot of those lessons and a lot of the feedback that was garnered in, addressing some of those issues. That's why we had maximized the stack and really wanted to capture all contingencies here.
Okay. Other board member Chugai, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering, does Starbucks as a company still develop any locations aside from a shop within a store, any locations as standalone that are not drive-through? Or is it that your model currently is all standalone Starbucks have to have a drive-through?
So I'm not prepared to expand on that further. I think that may be better addressed to Starbucks's real estate development leadership. But just speaking on behalf of the project load and a lot of the stores in development in pipeline, they do primarily consist of either a drive-through only or split cafe drive-through combination user, where standalone non-drive-through, pardon me, I can't speak to a standalone freestanding building non-drive-through Starbucks, but there are tenant improvements that are situated in high-rise buildings or other multi-tenant shopping centers or multi-tenant buildings. Those would be, there's a fair number of those too, and they tend to be focused in urban pockets and usually had some kind of coffee shop or maturing amenity or some other user that might be coming close to term. So right now, though, the prevailing development pattern is usually incorporating either a drive-through as a drive-through only or as a combination drive-through cafe.
Board Member Lacroix.
Having heard staff's recommendation for additional outdoor seating, It seems like you've already kind of thought through some of your responses and how you would address that. I was just curious on what you would propose, just if you've thought that through in terms of increasing the engagement of the pedestrian community through outdoor seating.
Yes. I think inevitably the number might change, and it could be, and I'd have to revisit the code with our design team, but the amount is going to be controlled by how many seats we could provide before we start getting in tripping requirements for additional plumbing facilities and bathrooms. So I'm not prepared to expand on it more than that. But of course, the goal here is to maximize fixed or dedicated seating, outdoor seating for the patrons. And of course, there's going to be some type of planners or hybrid seating arrangements that I think we could offer up that would be non-exclusive, but could ultimately serve the intention of seating the public or even transitional passerbys to enjoy their beverage or snack that they pick up from the store.
Okay, thank you.
Another follow-up question. Are you providing any bicycle infrastructure for bike parking for patrons here?
I believe so. Let me see if it is listed here on the. I'm just taking a look at the site plan that was prepared. I think that level of detail was omitted. I just wanted to clarify with Indira on our project team real quick. But yes, so we are confirming the amenity for bicycle parking.
Yes, we are providing parking bicycle. The code requires it, and we are providing it. That is correct.
And I see on the queuing lane there where the 5-panel menu board and speaker box is located, more adjacent to Orange Grove. But then I also see a reference to screens with vines. Can you clarify what those are intended to be?
Well, the primary function is not only to mitigate headlight glare and just seeing a stack of cars. It offers some screening along that Orange Grove elevation and along the sidewalk, but we don't have a specific elevation that would show that in function. It might be better illustrated in the packet to some degree. Let me see if I could pull up these concept perspectives. Okay, so yeah, that was actually a pretty recent addition. Looking at the perspectives offered in the packet, it doesn't reflect it, but the purpose and the intended function is to mitigate headlight glare and also just screen the drive-through lane.
Okay, because in the perspective view, it looks just like fences. So I was just trying to get clarity on what is the actual intended material and design element.
Mr. Chair, on sheet A004, there is a mesh screen elevation with some sections horizontally and vertically with a framing detail. And that might be page 5 of the PDF on the exhibit for this evening item.
Okay, I'll look at that.
That's sheet A004.
Okay, if there are no other follow-up questions, do we have callers from the public? Okay.
Yes, we do. We have 2 callers. First caller, Richard Ajabi. Richard Ajabi, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm the owner of this Glendale self-serve car wash right in front of the proposed project. I have a couple concerns about the egress. So 100% of the traffic exiting the Starbucks location would be going right only. If a possible way, if you deviated with not a right turn only, let the customer choose which way they go, if that's allowed with the zoning code to turn into left through residential, that could possibly deviate 20%, 25, 30% of the traffic only making a right. It will help a lot of less congestion right on that corner between my ingress and their egress. Another thing is I had my traffic engineer look over it. If all the frontage on Orange Grove, if they can have that red, so you can have opened up more space for through traffic coming in and out of that street for residents and the public, just so it won't be tight, because that street is a very narrow street, and there's customers coming into my property, my car wash. There's also going to the residents, people going out of that street. So the way it is right now, it's a very narrow street. If on the frontage of Orange Grove, that area would be red, you would just create a lot more open space for customers getting out of Starbucks and going in and out of that street. So there's more space so there won't cause any possible accidents. We looked at the site plan. I mean, it looks like they maximized the amount they can do on the queuing without splitting over to Glendale. Another concern someone brought up is the U-turn on Orange Grove, which would be a very bad idea. It's a very fast street. People drive up and down very fast, and that's everywhere. Everyone drives fast, but particularly up and down Glendale Avenue, because you're going downhill, you're coming uphill, and the lights are pretty far away from each other. I've seen a lot of people drive fast. I've seen a lot of almost accidents. Also, there's a lot of pedestrians walking on Orange Grove crossing Glendale, a lot of older people. I think it would be very irresponsible for having someone be able to make any kind of U-turn, especially customers coming into my property trying to make a U-turn. There can be an accident, big accident there. With that being said, I'm not against the project. Obviously, it will benefit my business, people getting Starbucks and possibly coming to using my facility. It's just very, we all know everything. We know Starbucks is in Glendale. They're always all busy. You look at the one on Colorado, they have about, I think, 13 or 14 in the queue, but they spill out sometimes 10, 15 cars all the way in front of the McDonald's on Colorado sometimes in the mornings. Not all the time, but their peaks, it happens. We see what happens on Grandview and Glen Oaks. They converted the KFC to a Starbucks. They changed the whole direction of flow. There was a lot of problems. It caused problems for the kebab place, no parking, the neighbors. Now they closed the alley. They have to go. They cannot make a right in. So it creates a lot of problems. And the last thing, I know that this use is zoned, C3 is zoned for this project, but you're changing the use completely. From a storefront retail to now a drive-through Starbucks. But I know these drive-through Starbucks do anywhere from 500 to 1,000 cars a day. So it's high volume. The only Starbucks on Glendale Avenue, you're talking 30, 35,000 cars passing. This is Glendale Avenue cuts through all the way to downtown LA. So it's going to be a very high volume store. So this is something that, I got my traffic engineer involved because I don't want to impact also my facility for customers coming to me. And not only that, also the residents in and out of the street. Because, sometimes we're busy, cars back up.
Sir,
and
your time's up. So thank you very much for calling in. Your time is up, sir. Unfortunately, your time is up. So we have to move on to the next caller. So next caller, please.
Alec Bartrosov. Alec Bartrosov, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board, and apologies for the mispronunciation of the last name.
That's okay. You got it. Hi, my name is Alec Bartrosov. I serve as the chair of the Sustainability Commission for the city. So good to be with you, fellow commissioners, though I am speaking today as an individual. So I live walking distance to this proposed project. I'm very much concerned about the drive-through aspect of this project and do not support the project. As has been mentioned by commissioners and members of the public, the drive-through queuing is a huge problem. I sent an email that I understand you have received with an example of 919 South Central Avenue, where there is a Starbucks, with similar land use patterns nearby, showing 6 cars queuing in the public right-of-way. And I understand the applicant is doing their best to maximize the use on site, but what they're not telling you is if they're addressing demand or not. So this is a constrained site, and they're doing the best that they can, but the best that they can is not enough. So there will be queuing on Glendale Avenue. That is something that needs to be acknowledged. And that is going to create chaos not only for traffic flow, but it's going to erode the pedestrian experience for people walking up and down the street and being alongside cars that are idling and exhausting fumes in the public right-of-way. I also am concerned about shade. So if you look at page 9 of Exhibit 1, there is no shade other than to shade the driveway for this project. So not only on the pedestrian side of Glendale Avenue, but also Orange Grove. I understand there's a lot of landscaping, but considering this is a site that has a lot of asphalt on it, there's barely any shade for pedestrians interfacing with the site. There is that shade structure where people will be sitting, but there's no relief of shade in the afternoon, for example, again, for people on site. For people passing by, there's zero shade, and I'm hoping that we can double, triple, quadruple the tree canopy on site to create that shade. I'm also concerned about trash. Anybody that has seen the Coffee Bean on Glendale Avenue just north of here is aware of the trash problem that they have. Not only are people congregating in the parking lot, but also in the seating area, and there's never enough trash receptacles. So I'm hoping that whatever version comes out of this, that we add as much trash receptacles as possible. And I also discourage and hope as part of the approval of this project that we do not allow red curbing on both Orange Grove or Glendale Avenue. That'll only increase their queuing capacity, which will erode the pedestrian experience and will not make this a pedestrian-friendly project. It'll only allow for them to queue even more cars, and we as pedestrians don't want to be subject to idling vehicles alongside a very fast corridor, let alone next to a Starbucks. So I hope the drive-through concerns are taken seriously. They are not going to be able to meet demand, which is the word that they're avoiding to use. And I hope that this project is modified severely in order to be pedestrian-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller.
Thank you. Next caller, Ellie Lester. Ellie Lester, live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes, hi. This is Eli Lester.
Oh, sorry, Eli. I apologize.
Thanks for taking this call. I should mention I serve on the Transportation and Parking Commission, and I'm just calling as a citizen, though. Although to some extent that experience has informed my opinion on this. My main objection is the part of the design I object to is basically the drive-through. A lot of the comments that I have been well covered by the 2 previous callers. But I think something worth mentioning is that these coffee shops in Glendale seem to be very well patronized, whether they are drive-throughs or not. There are 2 on Pacific that are not. They're both Starbucks. They're both well patronized. There's one on Glen Oaks, just mentioned earlier, at Grandview, that is a drive-through that causes backups. There's one on Colorado, over on the east side of town, near Harvey. And I mentioned that one in particular because as a commission, we were asked to approve speed bumps for Harvey, an adjacent street, because of outrage among neighbors over cars diverted into their neighborhood, trying to deal with interfacing with through traffic on the major street of Colorado. I don't think that functionally these uses match the urban framework of Glendale. this is a suburban type place type. A drive-through is a suburban place type, in my view. And I just think that, you know, at one point, you know, the coffee shop was a place where people meet, and it's hard to meet when you're in your cars. So basically, my comment is I don't think this matches the place, regardless of what the zoning says, and object to it as a drive-through, but not as a coffee shop. So that's my comment, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Next caller.
Thank you. Apologies. And with that, there are no other callers.
Okay, thank you. So we will give 2 minutes to the applicant to respond to some of the comments received from the public if they choose to do so.
Thank you, Chair Welch. And thank you to the callers for their feedback. A lot of these concerns seem to have a common thread, and that would be specifically, and I guess the prevailing thought here is the applicability or feasibility of the land use. And as it was stated, this is well within the parameters of acceptance by code and by zoning. And at this point, we're not prepared to expand on anything beyond that. And already the recommendations that have been issued and tendered by Dennis, Pastor, and all other Jay and all city staff and reviewing parties. So to get to the points that I just wanted to hopefully dispel, regarding shade, we actually do have significant shade provided by that structure along the street. And I also wanted to expand on the fact that there are plans to outline that shade structure for the purposes of solar energy. So by deploying panels there that both provide shade and also offset some of the environmental concerns and perhaps the sustainability concerns that the one caller had mentioned. Next, specifically in regards to traffic, I think it's recognized that the drive-through use has the capacity to create that overstack. And I don't think we've emphasized it enough that we've done everything with the site to accommodate that fitment and also address the potential for overstack on South Glendale Avenue. Wanted to also expand that in instances like that. Starbucks is willing to deploy a partner out that will come out and help alleviate some of the traffic concerns and any disruptions of site circulation. Speaking specifically to the offsites and any other controls to be implemented, whether on that reverse taper on South Glendale Avenue, site signage, that is to be determined. We do have KOA traffic engineers on board to address the comments already iterated by Pastor and his team, and we are prepared to reconcile those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And assuming there have been no other callers that have called in, okay, very good. We will close the public hearing unless there are board members who have any follow-up questions. Yes, okay, Board Member Chagayan, yes.
Yes, apologies. I do have a couple of questions back for our staff. Has there been a study done in how this site specifically compares, or how the plan for this site compares to other Starbucks locations, specifically in Glendale? Like, you know, the caller mentioned that he sent a photo of the one on Central. Do we know what the capacity for the queuing is at that drive-through? Just for reference to compare.
I can speak for site planning. Whenever planning staff looks at the design for a new project on a specific site, we mostly take a look at a site of its own strengths and constraints. And we do take in consideration of how, for example, just like this chain Starbucks does perform on a separate site. So, and that was some of our thought, working with the applicant on maximizing or trying to avoid as much queuing out onto the street. The Pastor kind of expand on this. From my understanding, with traffic, what they had required or they asked upon the applicant was to get the average queuing from the nearest Starbucks, which was one of them, which had a queuing of 15 cars. They took that in consideration and they provided a 16-car stack on site. If I got that wrong, please, Pastor, please correct me. But I'm just trying to answer this under one answer. But just kind of in summary, that's how planning would respond to this, as far as how we look at this from site planning and proposed uses.
Sure, and I'll go ahead and chime in and add that you are correct, Dennis. We did ask him to take a look at another site, particularly the one that we were having issues with was the one at Glen Oaks and Grandview, and that was mentioned by one of the callers. And at that location, Public Works staff, we did our own observation and observed up to a maximum of 15 vehicles in the queue. Not to say that that covers the entire 24 hours of the day, right? So we also asked Starbucks to do their own analysis, and they would have to, respond to this on how they did that, but their own analysis of what their worst case scenario queues would be based on their data from other Starbucks and the capacity to serve that they're going to have at this Starbucks. So they took those two things into account. They at least satisfied our observations from another Starbucks and in terms of the project site. And I'll expand to other issues because we did learn a lot from that Glen Oaks and Grandview. And then we are going to look at those elements in the traffic study here. How does the circulation impact the local streets? And I think we still need to get through that step. That's a significant step on this project in the traffic study.
Thank you. And then I guess my second question is, in the past, for DRB cases, we've been told that sort of the traffic concern is outside of our purview. Is that the case in how we are, voting for this project specifically tonight as well? Just for my own clarification.
So the design review board has purview of what's going on site. For example, just talking about the site planning of the building, the parking, and of course the massive scale and design details, but that does also translate and can affect the final design of placement of driveways and how it affects circulation on the outside. So outside on the street, it's really on the purview of Public Works and their codes and their requirements. But for this evening tonight, we would ask the board to review the site planning on site of circulation. I mean, just those concerns and the design, the on-site design.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we will close the public hearing. And we will move into board member deliberations on the project. Who would like to lead us off? Board member Lockeroff, would you like to lead us off on this one?
Sure, I can. I'd like to start by saying I do share the concerns of the public and board member Welsh in that I think that it would be benefit the community around this area if there was more places to sit and it's less focus on traffic and cars moving through the site. I I'm hearing that the studies that a significant step is remaining in terms of the traffic. So I'm hesitant to approve this project because of that. I feel like that not everything is worked out, and it really does, as you said, impact the site planning if it is to be altered. If I am going to just dive into how it is currently planned, I do appreciate the way that the seating is along Glendale Avenue. I love the shade structure. I do think that will engage the public. And I do think that's a nice element, and it helps to balance that so much of this is a drive-through. And I agree with staff's recommendation strongly that we need to include more seating and maybe not in such and in a more deliberate way than just planters. I think that in making sure that the bike racks, I know they are included in the design, but I'd like to have that noted as a definite condition. One other element in the site that I think could be refined is the corner. I think that it could be celebrated more and utilized more for the public. And let's see, I think there was one other condition I was hoping to address. Let's see, I agree that the trash enclosure is kind of a prominent. That center island, I feel like, is a bit of a sad wasted space, and there definitely needs to be more detail included for the trash enclosure. Oh, and one more important item is I agree with staff's recommendation for trees with larger canopies, and also the caller they mentioned more shade. I think the more shade trees specifically on this site would be a great benefit, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Chugai.
Yes, thank you. I too would like to echo my fellow board member and everything she said. I agree. I am a Starbucks fan, and I get Starbucks all the time, but I have to say that when I see the line of a drive-through so backed up, it deters me actually from going to the Starbucks. I would much rather prefer to go find a parking spot and get down and grab my drink as opposed to waiting in such a long drive-through. So I think part of, even though I appreciate the staff and applicants' effort and planning and trying to accommodate more cars on site, so I think that's also deterring, or it's hurting the project in the sense that the more space you provide for the cars, I think it's gonna backfire, and you are gonna get much more of that sort of backup along the street. And Glendale Avenue is such a busy street. It's in the heart of central Glendale. So definitely concerning that it's very car centric. Definitely agree that we need more seating. I love the idea of sort of revamping that corner. I think that is a missed opportunity. In Montrose, for example, at crosswalks, we have these little built-in benches, which are always used, very pedestrian friendly. Grab your drink and go out and sit on a bench. Provide more shade with the trees. I absolutely agree. I think as far as the design, I think it's nice. It's very, Starbucks has the iconic look, and we all know when we see the wood and the logo, we know that's a Starbucks. I definitely agree that the upper part of the stucco box needs that the corrugated metal to break up that look. But also what I think is working so successfully in that image that Mr. Joe shared as a reference for that corrugated metal, there's a secondary inset image of a similar canopy that has a lot fewer columns that I think is working It's nicer than the amount of columns that this design has for that shade structure along Glendale Avenue. I feel like it's a little too busy. So if we can lessen that look, I think it would help the project. And yeah, that I think is the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For my part, I largely agree with my fellow board members here in many of their comments. So what I'll add is that I appreciate what the applicant and the staff are trying to do here with dealing with this queuing issue, which is very real. I mean, I'm a big coffee drinker too, and I have waited in these lines before myself, I'll admit. But it's the question I think that we have to deal with from a design guidelines perspective and a site planning perspective is this the correct type of use and application of site planning for a very prominent, busy intersection in urban Glendale? One of the callers said it quite plainly. This is more of a suburban thing. You know, this is not San Bernardino. This is Glendale. And, you know, to take buildings that are street-facing retail, you know, and really address the street and are about building an urban environment and taking it away and substituting something that is so car-centric, to me seems like not in accordance with the design guidelines and what we are looking for creating an urban environment in Glendale. Now, I'll admit you've done some things that make it a more net positive thing in some of those regards by bringing the seating towards the street, making it street friendly, pedestrian friendly. I can appreciate that, and I think that the intent is there to try to mitigate this, but it's still, to me, just a bridge too far. I can't but help compare this to the previous case that we had, which was on a 21,000 square foot lot, C3 zoning. This is a 20,480 square foot site, C3 zoning. And that project is 16 times larger than what is proposed here in terms of square footage. And in this case, we are going from having a residential unit and 6,000 square foot of commercial space down to 1,500 square feet and space for lots of cars. So I just have an issue with that from a site planning perspective. I think the design team has done a good job with the design. I think staff did a great job in terms of trying to bring this to the right direction. But I can't support something that I don't think is in keeping with the design guidelines, is my perspective on it. So that is my perspective. Any comments? Anyone? Board Member Chagayan?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the solution is here, because I know we all feel pretty much the same, and based on what the applicant was showing in all the iterations of the planning that they have done, it goes back to my question of, that's why I was asking the Starbucks, are you opposed to providing a Starbucks that does not have a drive-through? Because I think in this case, it's not going to benefit our city to add this drive-through at this location, right? So we have to look at the site in its context. We're not, personally not opposed to a Starbucks being built here, but I don't think the drive-through is going to work out the way everybody is hoping it would. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's, I would be open to other board member suggestions as to how we move on this one. I'm open to return for redesign, taking into consideration all of our concerns and comments. But I do feel like it would have to be a drastic change from what we're seeing now.
And I think we can do that. We would have to try to give them some guidance on that. I think that would be the goal here. Is you know, make a recommendation that we remove the drive-through and or seriously redesign the elements of this so that it is allowing more parking. You know, there's this concept in transportation planning called induced demand, and I think that this is going to be one of those cases where creating space for more queuing on the site will just, you know, create more demand for people to use it. And you'll still end up having queuing into the street. I think, you know, that is highly likely, in my opinion. So I think that we could send it back for redesign with a recommendation that they drop the drive-through and or seriously reconsider the amount of queuing space that they're providing and provide more parking. But personally, for me, I would like for them to just drop the drive-through.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. I think that seems like a return for redesign seems like the best path forward and with providing additional guidance. So I would agree with that.
Mr. Platt, do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of this? Are there some findings that you would like us to make specifically that address the site planning characteristics?
I think you've been pretty clear on the site planning. A question whether there's consensus on the complete elimination of the drive-through and having a standalone store with parking. You also mentioned, Mr. Welsh, the idea of reconsidering the queuing, but I think you backed away from that. So I'm not sure what that would even mean. So
I think it is up to my fellow board members here. They're the ones who are going to make the motion. But yeah, my preference would be to eliminate the drive-through.
Okay, and then,
I'll leave it to them.
And then given that, I guess if you give us some design direction, it sounds like everyone was okay with the look and feel of the architectural design. I think there was a consensus that having outdoor street enlivening seating, covered seating, shaded areas is good. And I think this presupposes that the parking would be directed toward the east behind the building and move the shop up toward Glendale. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's probably enough direction for us to write some conditions. And in the meantime, we're also expecting another traffic study. I don't know if that would impact anyone's opinion of the project, but the Starbucks team could return with the results of that study, and they may still propose a drive-through, at which point the board will have to make a decision how it wants to proceed at the next hearing.
I think we would welcome additional studies. So,
right.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion on this?
I moved.
I'm sorry, before you do that, we'll just go back to the staff recommended conditions and modify them as needed to reflect your direction.
Okay. Board Member Chigai?
Yes, sorry, I was pulling up the staff conditions, so I had it in front of me. But yes, I moved to return the project for redesign and to, with the condition or suggestion of coming back with the proposed version that does not include a drive-through. But as Mr. Platt stated, if they have further studies, we are open and welcome to seeing those.
I second motion.
So I have a motion by Board Member Chagayan and a second by Board Member Lockeroff. This will be roll call. This will be for return for redesign with the conditions to be outlined within the future final record decision. This is roll call. Board Member Lakarev,
Yes.
Board Member Chikayan,
Yes.
and Mr. Chair Welsh.
Yes.
Motion stands 3-0 for the project to be redesigned.
Okay, thank you very much. That was our last case for tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Will somebody move it?
Motion to adjourn.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Have a good
We are
night.
adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.